Good morning guys and welcome to another part of my van build. In this one we're going to absolutely smash on with the solar. This van came with a 100-watt solar panel on the top, but I need way more than that and the thing's looking a bit old and ragged. So I've decided to take that off and I'm going to install in 460 watts of solar, an MPPT charge controller and adding a third battery to my battery bank. So without further ado, let's get on the roof, get stuck in and get this old panel off. It's going to be a bit of a nightmare to take off. I think the best bit is going to be a chisel. It's going to make a mess of the paintwork, but we're going to be painting this van anyway. I'm really hoping I can get this off without breaking it, because obviously it's pretty much glass. It is budging a little bit on this end, a tiny bit. So I'm just going to keep chipping away, and hopefully I can get it free. Managed to free one edge up. I've got it propped to a bit of wood. That is really hard graft. Look at the thickness on some of the silicone. It's just gigantic dollops of it holding it on. So I've propped it, not too much that it's going to bend the panel, but I've got to somehow get the chisel in there. I'm trying from both angles. I'm scraping at that back edge and I'm scraping at that edge. Oh, finally, I got the solar panel off. Oh my god, this bit was the worst. It was just such a neat, well not neat, there's nothing neat about this at all, but it was such a close bond that I just couldn't get a blade between it or anything. Look at the state of it. Never use silicone to attach a solar panel. But if you have, you don't need to worry that it's going to come off on the motorway, because that was an absolute nightmare. I gave this a slight tug. This is where the cables went through into the van. Honestly, the slightest little tug and it just peeled away. I pulled the cables all the way through because my mum and her partner would like this on their roof. So they might as well have the cables that are already attached, and I'll buy some new ones. Probably a new one of them because it's just a bit minging. But first of all, I'm going to get the rest of the silicone off. Oh, it was a horrible, horrible job. But it's off and it's safe and it still works. I did a voltage test, so yeah, I didn't manage to crack the cells, which is good. I'll show you up on the roof now. I've given it a quick clean. It's still pretty minging. It's going to need a few attempts, and then it's going to need sanded and painted before the solar panels go on. Solar panels haven't arrived today, but the MPPT charge controller has, so I'm going to show you how to install that. This is our Rover 40 amp MPPT charge controller. If you don't know what that is, basically solar panels, the amount of voltage and ampage that they bring in fluctuates because of the amount of sun, so you need something that regulates that voltage for the batteries. But it doesn't just regulate the voltage, it also listens, but it also knows what the batteries want. Because obviously if the batteries are really full, you don't want to hammer it with a load of power, you want to just trickle in a little bit to keep them topped up. So this understands what's coming from the panels and it understands what the batteries need and regulates that whole system. This one is 40 amps, which is more than enough for the two panels we've got. When you buy your panels, check the ampage on them, they'll have a rating. When you wire these in, you always wire the battery before the panel, which is suitable for me because I haven't got any solar panels yet, but it does mean that I can mount it here on the wall and get it connected up to the battery. Once you've connected it, you need to actually set these to the type of battery you have, because different batteries require different voltages. So it's important to set the type of battery you have, otherwise you could under or overcharge your system. So I'm just going to mount this on the wall with the little brackets that came with it. I think they provide like a bit of an air gap behind. It says you need 6 inches of space above and below for airflow, I presume. Seems a bit excessive to me, and because I'm not going to be using anywhere near the 40 amps, I can't see this thing getting too hot. I do have 4 inches below and tons of space above, but do follow the manual yourself. The one in the previous van didn't even get warm in the slightest, so I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, I'll get that screwed on the wall. Look what just arrived on this beautiful sunny day. Yes, two 230 watt solar panels. I've got some cables to join these two together, but I haven't got the cable that is going to connect through the roof of the van and into the solar charge controller yet. That is to arrive in a day or two, but that's fine because it gives me time to get up on the roof, give it a sand down and paint it black, and then I can mount these and just be ready to basically feed the cables through, and then a lot of the system will be done then. Morning guys, so I had a bunch of electrics installed in the van and halfway through it I decided I was going to change it all. So I've kind of disconnected it all. I've added an extra battery, so I'm going to have 3 Ledger batteries now. And instead of having a split charge relay, it's going to be a battery to battery charger. But I'll talk about all of that when it comes to actually installing it, and I'll show you how it's all done. Basically, the plan of attack today is to sand the roof and paint it so that it's ready to have the panels put on, because obviously it's going to be a nightmare to lift the panels back up to then paint it. So black is the colour choice. It's going to be military paint. We do actually have a video on painting our last van that I'll put up at the top somewhere. If you're interested in how to paint a van with military paint, it's a very affordable way of doing it. So that's the roof all sanded down, and then we'll give it a brush down as well just to remove all the dust. Now we're going to give it a good wash, let it dry, and then we're going to tackle the rusty bits with Q-Rust, let that dry, and then it's time to paint it. So the Q-Rust on the top of the van is nice and dry, so it's time to get up there and paint. We've got black military paint. I'm just going to give it a stir, and then we're going to paint it, and then we're just going to leave it to dry. It's not meant to rain until tomorrow, tomorrow sometime, so should be plenty of time to dry. I think you're supposed to leave it for 24 to 48 hours to be fully dry, but it's touch dry within an hour, so it'll be absolutely fine before it rains. Right, let's talk electrics. So I am not an expert, and you should really do more research than watching this video. This is not an extensive tutorial. I'm just showing you what I did. I have looked into it a lot. I believe I know what I'm doing. So when I first got the system, I got 2 120 amp hour batteries and decided last minute actually make it free. These were the first 2 batteries that I bought that I have wired in parallel, which means your negative terminals are connected and your positive terminals are connected. This keeps this system on 12 volts. So I'm just going to wire these up. Luckily, because I already had the first set, I knew the length. I also knew the size of the battery. So I built this battery bank holder, I guess. It's screwed into the ground and across like this. I also have these little straps that came wrapped around the solar panels when they arrived. And I think I'm going to try and strap 2 of these across the tops. So I'll screw it into this piece of wood, across and into the wall, just to give it something along the top to hold it to. Probably not necessary because it's so heavy. I'd have to hit a speed bump at like 60 mile an hour, and then the battery's jumping out of the slots are probably the least of my worries in that case, because I'd have no axle. So I'm going to attach these cables. I've got more terminals. I'm going to get these terminals on. I'm going to connect up these cables, and then I'll take some voltmeter checks just to show you guys that this is still a 12 volt system. I could have done shorter cables to prevent these big loops, but I'm not too bothered. Nothing's going to be going above them. So yeah, I've got negative to negative, negative, positive to positive to positive. You'll also notice in the video that I connected the negative before the positive. I think when it comes to wire and battery stuff, you're always doing the negative before you do positive cables. Right, so now I'm just going to use this voltmeter, which I've set to 20 volts. And I'm just going to take some tests from the positives and the negatives, and you'll see that I should get the same reading no matter which positive and which negative I use. I'm going to go for that negative, that positive, and we're getting 12.8. That negative, that positive, 12.8. That negative to that positive, 12.8. So if you remember, I said about having all the live connections onto one side and then all the negatives to the absolute opposite side, so the furthest point, so that the power goes through the whole system. I've put a slightly different terminal on these 2. It's just 1 bolt on top. These ones are a bit fiddly from the side, and they're made out of that kind of cheap, I don't even know, I don't think they're brass, I think they're like coated cheap crap. Whereas this one is much more heavy duty, and it's a lot easier to access on the top. So what I'll be doing is connecting this to a bus bar, which is what this is. It's literally just a long strip of metal with some screws on it. These particular ones can carry 150 amps each, so that's always worth keeping in mind. You do get heavier duty ones, but this is fine for my system. So I'll be connecting that to there. And then anything that I want connected to that, I actually just connect to that. It's the same thing in essence, and it saves me having tons of connections to the battery. I think you should never have more than 4 items connected to one terminal on a battery anyway, so this is a very neat and tidy way of connecting lots of stuff to it. And then the same will apply with the negative. So I'll run a cable, a nice heavy duty 16mm cable from here to this bus bar, and then I'll take a cable out of that, which I've already got in place, and I'll run it to a grounding point, which I've made in here. I'm still waiting on some stuff to arrive, so I'll talk you through how everything else is going to connect. I've got an inverter to install. I've got the solar charge controller to install. I've got a battery to battery charger coming. I'll explain it all as it comes, but for now, that is how you wire 3 batteries in parallel to ensure that you've got 12 volts for your system. So I've got this plastic stuff that was used to wrap up the solar panel boxes, and I've just folded it over so it's twice as thick, and then put a washer and a screw through that piece of wood there. I made sure the screw wasn't too long, that it would go through the wood and into the battery. And then I'm going to use this to strap it, basically. I can pull on that with some force and nothing's happening. So yeah, I'm going to do 2 of these running in parallel like that. They're pretty tight. I've got the cable running along, it's then going to come along here, and then I need to cut it shorter and connect it to this negative bus bar. That's the negative bus bar successfully earthed to the van. Now we just got to connect the negative of the battery to the negative bus bar. Then we can connect the live to. What I'm also going to do is put a breaker switch. So I've got this nice big switch here because I want to be able to disconnect the battery from everything on the bus bar. Of course, all the little icons for what these ports are on the underside, so we'll have to take a look. The thing with the load on this is that the maximum it can carry is less than my system's going to need because of my inverter, so these are probably obsolete for me. If you wanted to monitor how much your system was using, if you were just using lights and USBs and stuff like that, then I would recommend wiring your fuse box or whatever into this, and then you could get some information from what you're using basically. So it's 40 amps. I'm going to use 60 amp cable. So you just get a screwdriver. I'm going to presume that these are already screwed in slightly, so I'm going to unscrew them as far as they'll come. Having a look underneath. In fact, I'm going to use the phone to have a look underneath. I can't see what you guys can see, but I'm going to watch the footage back to find out. So I'm just going to find out which one's a positive, which one's a negative, and then wire in these cables. This one, the left hand side, is the positive. So making sure you're holding the cable in position nicely, and then just tighten up. So that's on good and tight. I can give it a tug. I don't like to tug on cables because, well, you could sort of undo them, but you have to test. That's definitely not going anywhere. So in with the negative. So they're now the leads that are going to run to a positive and negative bus terminals. All systems go. Postman's just been, and I've got 10 meters of solar cable. So yeah, there's no stopping me now really. I can get the solar panel on the roof, which is awesome. So on each solar panel you're going to have a positive and a negative. And the good thing is with these Y connectors and all of the solar connectors is that you can't get it wrong. You can't connect those two. So quite simply, I'm going to connect the positive into that terminal of one panel and of the other panel too. And then I'll be able to take that and connect it to my cables and run that down to the solar charge controller. It's pretty simple. I'm going to show it all when I'm on the roof anyway, but I'm just explaining that you're going to need 2 of these Y connectors if you're doing 2 panels. If you're not doing 2 panels, then simply connect these terminals to your solar cables and then run that down to your charge controller. Step 1 is getting both of these panels up on the roof. Once I'm up there, I will realise that there's tons of tools that I didn't take up with me, and I'll come back down. So this is going to be really hard to film and it's really windy. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach these to the panels. There's already holes in the panel framework, so I'm going to bolt them on. Once I've got all 4 of them on, I'm going to center them and see where they lie. Just to quickly show you that I've got one of them on. That's how it looks in the end. The bolt feeds through. There's a washer to go on the back side, a washer to go on the front side, and one of those tensioner washers has bolted in so that this surface here is going to rest on the roof of the van. In hindsight, I should have attached all of these before I was on the roof. I don't know why that didn't cross my mind. But anyway, I'm going to attach all 8 of these to the 2 panels, and yeah, I'll catch you then. Right, it's got all the little connectors on. There's 4 on each. I've just done a measurement. The panels are 118 wide, and the roof between the black rubber bit on the inside and the black rubber bit on the inside is 138, which is easy maths because it means it's 20 centimeters wider, so it's 10 centimeters on each side that I need to leave space to ensure these are in the middle. The other thing to pay attention to, because the roof is so wobbly and bendy, is I need to make sure I'm able to screw into something. So on this, I've lined it up with this rib. But what that means is it sits lower here. But luckily, because of these brackets, it gives it a little bit of height. So I can actually screw through here, it'll be fine. And then this one, I'm gonna line up onto this rib, and then just wherever it falls along that back beam. Before I screw these down, what I really need to do is connect these cables up and find out where they're gonna come out. I'm probably gonna bring them out there together and then run it along there to where the flangey thing's gonna be. It's not called the flange. I always call it the flange, but it's called the flange. I'm calling it the flange. Yeah, I'm gonna pull the other cables out the side of this and then join them up with my little kit. While I'm at it, I'm just gonna grab that just to check I still have space. It's going further up, but it's the same distance, so that's fine, fits fine. So, like I said, I took the two positives and now it's become one, and the two negatives and it's become one, or whichever way around they are. Like I say, you can't get it wrong because they only fit into one type. So now I've got two leads. So with that new solar cable I got today, I just need to attach the little terminal things that go on the end and connect to that. You'll notice the feet don't marry up. That's because these can actually slide back and forth, so I've obviously set them up slightly differently on them. But what's important is that the edges of the panels are in line. I'll do some double checks because you always measure twice. I don't see any water getting in there. I did a bit of silicone underneath. I did the self-piloting hole, and then I've done a dollop of silicone on the top. If I ever needed to take these off, I would just be able to pull that silicone off, but it should create a watertight bond. So I'm going to crack on and do all of the rest without falling off the roof. So it's all completely mounted in. Each of them's all got their little dollop of silicone on top of the bolt. It's drying quite quickly. But yeah, this just for a little bit of added protection. Need to get this on, so it requires drilling 2 holes, just like those ones, for the solar cables to go through the roof. Really, these should be installed that way, so that when you're driving on rainy days, you know, 60 mile an hour rain is going like that over the top, rather than at these. They are waterproof, and they should hold absolutely fine. It's probably better practice to be that direction. Either way, whichever way I'm going to do that, I need to drill 2 holes in the middle of here, and unlike those ones that go that way, I want them side by side that way. So smack bang in the middle of that, because I don't need to be that accurate because of the size of the underside of that. I just need 2 big holes in there, big enough to carry the cable, and just like the holes that are already in place, I have a drill bit of that size. So here we go. Right, I've just pulled out a big chunk of insulation and opened up all of this. Don't think the camera's going to be able to get in there and show you, but I can feel where the holes are. So with these new holes made, and all the insulation taken out from within the van, I want to put a bit of this ducting stuff. Is it ducting? I think it is. I want to get a bit in each side so that when I feed the cable, it goes through this and protects it from the kind of sharp edge of that. So I'm going to put these 2 in, and then I'm going to feed a length of wire down. So that's the cable coming down through the roof, and I've just put a bit of tape on it. Because I've only got black cable, it's really important to identify which one's positive and which one's negative. So there, I've just put a little plus on that one, and then I'll do the same with the negative, and then I can't get confused. Right, all those connecting cables are now tucked under this panel, and I've got just the 2 connectors coming out now. And now I've got these 2 connections that I need to fit onto the 2 cables that go through the roof. This is my positive wire because I've named it that down in the van. Just went and cut this wire that's coming up through the roof. I need to put a female adapter to it because it fits on to there. And this again is my positive leads. Right, it's important to get these the right way around. So from the lives, I've got the male attachment, and it's going to go into a female attachment, which is this one. It's important to know that inside there's a metal tube. Now this small metal tube needs to go inside that bigger metal tube. So for the live wire, I'm using the smaller of the two metal tubes that come with it. I'm sure these have a name, but metal tube's gonna do for me. So basically I'm gonna put this in to the tube like that, just crimp it. There's little foldy metal bits on the side. And then it's gonna feed into the female connector as far as it'll go. Then the little rubber bit pushes into there, like that. And then you start screwing that on. And you want to screw this really tight, because that's what's going to stop any water getting in. So that now is a female lead for the positive coming from the panel. I'm not going to click these in because I want this to go underneath the panel. I'm going to feed that live wire right underneath, try and find it. There it is. And now I can connect the two. And that's it. I now have both of the live cables connected and then running through the roof of the van down into the van, which is excellent news. So now I have to repeat the process. Should have done that. Shouldn't have done that because it needs to go through that. Don't be an idiot like I was. I completely forgot that my cables need to go through this. So I've had to pull it off and start again. So basically with these, you get two of those little things and then the box. So you have to screw them in like this. Don't tighten that up, because as you tighten that, the hole there actually pinches, so that's for pinching against the cable. So yeah, basically initially you're just screwing that first bit in. So should be like that now. And I'm just going to leave it sat like that so that I can do the same with the other one. This can be tightened up in the end once it's all in position. There's no point in tightening it up now. But now that this is like this, I can attach the metal end that needs to go inside the connector. Initially I stripped like 1 centimeter, but now I've stripped a lot more, and I can feel that that cable is quite happy to push right inside of that rod, which is going to make a much better connection. So now this is going to be able to come over and connect to the positives coming from the battery. I left lots of slack on the inside of the van so that I can pull some up, because I had a feeling that it was going to be kind of close. So I can now bring this round like that, and I'll do the same with the other, and then probably find a way of clamping it to this. I'm just going to go into the van and double check that it does reach the solar charge controller. I've got the cable coming down there, I've got it going behind the woodwork now, and it comes down, and then it needs to connect there. I'm just going to now do the exact same process with the negative side of the solar panels, and the only difference this time is the male connector, which is going to be on the end of my cable coming up through the second slot in the roof, uses the larger of the two pins. I'll do the exact same process, then we should have all the wiring in ready to connect it to the solar charge controller. So I've decided I'm going to turn this around just to give these a bit more flex. It was a wee bit tight when they were kind of coming round and along. I didn't like it very much. I've also put a third hole in. I've got some cable here. It can handle 11 amps. So I'm actually going to wire this down here, drill a little hole in the back of this, have the cable come out of there, then silicone around that, and I'm going to run the cable to the back of the solar panel somewhere in the middle, because it gives us the option to mount a light on the back shining off the back doors. It's kind of the best location for it. So I'm going to install the wire for it while I'm here, because it's a lot easier to do it than changing my mind and try to do it later. So I'm going to drill a little hole in that, feed the cable through it, feed the cable down through there into the back of the van, and then I'm going to lay a load of silicone on the base of this, drop it into position and connect those wires up. A big fat brick is the heaviest thing I could find. I saw lots of silicone squidge out the side, so I'm pretty confident I've put plenty on. Just added a bit of silicone to where that cable comes out for the light. It goes under the solar panel, comes out here, I'm just going to tape up the end and then tuck it under the solar until I fit the light on here. So I've bought this little guy, and it's basically 40 amp breaker switch, but not only that, it's an isolator switch, so you can manually turn it off and turn it on, which is really useful. You kind of getting buy one get one free on that, really. I'm going to put this on the positive from the solar, which is this one, in line. This is built for 40 amps, but my panels should only really be producing, well, they should be producing less than 30 amps. So this is going to trigger if something goes wrong with those panels. The cable that I bought for the panels can carry much more than 40 amps. Basically, this will kick in and save my charge controller should something happen with the panels that causes some kind of mad surge or something. Of course, I'm going to disconnect this cable from the panel before I start working on it, because that is live. I'm basically really eager to make sure all this system works. I still need to wait on that cable to run between the bus bars. But what I can do to test this and just to see if everything's working is I can connect that up to the live of the battery, that's the negative of the battery, and then feed the two solar cables in. And I should be able to get some sort of reading to do with how much solar is coming in. Then I'll disconnect the solar panels and disconnect from the battery and wait for the heavy duty cable to come to set up the full system. But yeah, I'm just really eager to see if this works basically. So this breaker that I got doesn't actually need like connectors on it. It comes with a little Allen key, and then you just undo that little nut in there and then put your cable in there and tighten it up, and you also run the cable through this little rubber thing that goes over the top. So I've taken the positive wire, I've taken it to here, I've then cut it, so there's over a little bit, and I'm going to install this here on the wall near the solar. Got the positive coming in, and then it goes through the breaker. That's it in the on position, that's in the off position. It's still disconnected on the roof at the moment, so there's nothing coming through this at all. I've just ran the negative alongside next to it. Now I'm going to wire the positive and negative into this, but keeping the panel disconnected because the battery must be connected first. So in order of connection, we're going to go negative terminal on the battery, then positive terminal on the battery, then this should come alive because it was powered by the battery. So I think these instructions might be translated. To enter the battery program settings, hover over the battery voltage screen. Just hover my finger, like what does that mean? Alright, if you hold the right key, then the battery type starts flashing. And then you've got gel, lithium, flooded, SLD. Well, mine is AGM, so I'll go with gel. Right, you hold the right one to confirm. So now we're on gel. This is now running and ready for power from the solar panels. So I'm going to go connect the cables on the roof. Notice that the solar panels haven't lit up. I'm going to flick the breaker back on. It should light up, and then we should get some input. 3, 2. Not getting anything from the panel. Okay, so it wasn't showing up that there was anything coming from the panel, and then I just cycled through the menu and it came up saying 22.3 volts coming from the panel, and then that lit up. So I think it just took a moment to realize what was going on, I suppose. So there you go, we're bringing in about 22 volts, and more importantly 2.85 amps. So you multiply the two, just call it 22 times 3, 66 watts at the moment from 460 watts of solar. That's because they're flat, and honestly the sun, you know, like the sun shining at the roof at such a flat angle, you know, you wouldn't expect much solar from that at all. So you can also see that the batteries are now charging. So there's also a temperature sensor that comes with this. It's that rod there, and what you're supposed to do is on the left hand side in here there's a port, and you plug that in, and then you take this and then you mount that somewhere near your batteries. The reason that is because the temperature of batteries can affect the voltage that they read. So it means that this will actually bring in more or less energy depending on the temperature of the battery, because it will know that the voltage is showing lower or higher. But yeah, basically a cold battery reads lower voltage. I'll probably install it later on. It's not high on my priority list right now. Beer is on the priority list right now. It's Friday night, and what is it, like 8:30, and I'm still going. Presumably that means error 0, no errors. I don't know. There's a lot more in the instruction manual to read than I have read. And we're just going to do a test run. So We're getting 21.8 volts from the panel. I'm just going to hit the breaker and it drops off, which is brilliant. Means I can disconnect the solar at any point should I wish to. But that's me done for today. I am knackered and I'm going to drive to town and get some nice cold cider. But it's been a successful day. It's good to see all the batteries in. It's good to see the solar running. I don't know why I'm laying on the ground. I'm pretty knackered. But yeah, that was a very successful day. And hopefully we can get this black cable that I want to connect the bus bar. Hopefully that arrives in the post tomorrow. And then we can make some serious progress with the rest of the electrics. Right, signing out. See you next time.